Peace, everyone. Go live on Instagram and then we will get started with the stream for today. See, everything's nice and evian. Greetings, peace, and abundance to everyone today. Welcome to episode 14, for real this time, of Parlez with Sensei Shui. Excuse me. Today we will discuss, let me go ahead and get this a little closer to me, so that way to ensure that you can hear. All right, and let's just start over for the sake of audio. Greetings, peace, and abundance to everyone. Welcome to episode 14 of Parlez with Sensei Shui, where today we are discussing identity and the role that it plays in our lives. So, when it comes to identity and the role it plays in our lives, just to heads up, I'm not talking about general identity about like, oh, well, who am I? And this is what I do. And this is my role. Okay, but then think about what word is being used, role. When you're watching a theater or a play like Hamilton, what is each character doing? They're fulfilling a role in the play that you're sitting back and watching. Likewise, in our lives, when it comes to the role, realize you play a role in your life. So when it comes to identity, realize identity is a flexible and dynamic factor. It is not something that's stagnant. I want to speak on this one thing. Often you hear, oh, you're not even a real person. Oh, this person, are they being real? Are you real or are you fake? Well, let's scale it back and then get into the words we're using and understanding what it is. Or rather, you could say comprehending. We're not going to stand under what's going on. So when it comes into person comes from Greek, I believe it's personikos or personas. Personas is the mask that in traditional Greek plays, that's what they wear. The mask that they put on. The mask that they put on is called a personas. So in that way, when we're using the word person in everyday life, realize that, oh, this isn't even a real person. Well, how could a mask be real if it's something that's covering something else? So to go in that way, what is the person covering? What are these different roles play? When it comes to this is called samskaras, if you're in the yogic philosophy point of view. If you're of the higher balance version, they call it the eyes. For this, I will call them the personas. Knowing from which I explained a personas is a role of which is played. So for you who are listening, think of it this way. Do you notice that when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're mad, when you're sexually aroused, when you're hungry, when you're frustrated, when you just got paid, when you're waiting to get paid, all of these different mechanisms or emotions decide differently. Much like if you can remember Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, or someone recently Inside Out, how you have these different personalities, like you have joy, you have happy, you have sleepy, you have grumpy, that all act out. Rather, these are all mechanisms within our consciousness. In the same way, how you act when you're alone in your room with your brother or sister, if you have them, or cousins, if you have them, mother or father, grandparents, friends, depending on which friend, a different aspect of you, or I would even call it a different persona, a different mask shows up. But the thing is, what is the persona covering? What is actually operating in order for the persona, for the personas be given life to? That is when I say the true spirit functions through. Otherwise, what this is what's called the ego. I would say the personality or personalities are a mechanism for the ego to function through. And again, I talked about this in earlier episodes, but when I say the word ego, I bring it back to mean is like the part of you that identifies as body, the name you're given, the clothes you're wearing, the one that when someone says, hey, Shui, and I go like this, that's ego that just responded. Because that's the one that's giving identity, or the way that is translating the experience to the middle pillar, which is just similarly the chakras lined up, or the I. All right. I'm one that spells I with a straight line because this is the straight line that I represents. Okay. In the characters. Or like one. Why does I and one use the same thing? It's a single stroke. Because a single stroke is, say, on an energetic level, what you would appear like without all this other stuff going on from the pure source. Without this toroidal fields going on, what's in the center? It's the energy centers lined up in alignment. What is the thing that the two snakes of the caduceus or the Ida and Pingala are going around? It's the I, right? That goes here. This may be what translates and looks up that translates. However, what does it go into? How is everything displayed? It's through the physical body. Yet when it comes into the roles of identity, one of the things I experience a lot for those who are new on the spiritual journey, again, please ask questions. If you have any questions will come up, please ask questions and then I will respond. For those new on the spiritual journey, I experienced this kickback in a way. Once I started to learn all these things about reality, about myself, about things I believed that were, I didn't actually investigate why I believed it. I just took it at face value. Once I started to have these epiphanies, I felt like sharing it to everyone. And when I did, I'd be surprised that it wasn't met with the same passion or understanding. Rather, it was met with anger, frustration, or sometimes it would feel like the person's memory would get entirely deleted, which is true to a certain extent. So when it comes to the role of personas and for personality, realize again, personas is the mask that is worn by an actor on a stage. Going into Shakespeare, we are merely actors and the world is a stage. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. That is a Masonic poem that is also a nursery rhyme. So when it comes into these things, realizing if this is a dream, no different than when you go to sleep, which character are you playing? Sometimes you realize you might be having a dream and the role that you're assuming is completely different into that is the role that you're assuming right now. As is the character, what you're dressed within in that conscious experience is separate or a little different than what you are right now. Likewise, if you drive a truck or you drive a car, you drive a van, you drive a Jaguar, you drive a Ford, you drive a Geo, whatever it is, these are different vehicles in order to get to your destination. But is it that you identify with the vehicle itself in order to gain your sense of identity, or do you realize that the sense of identity is something within? And more so, speaking to the roles of identity, we need to realize that these different personas, these different emotions have their role, they have their place. Just like tools in a toolbox. You don't really use a screwdriver for nails. Likewise, you don't use a hammer for screws. Well, you could, but it tear up the wall and completely defeat the purpose of the instrument that you're trying to use. Likewise, to speak, when I find myself getting into spiritual states, if you're one that truly gets into these states and doesn't just post things, you may realize you're a lot more sensitive to others, more so than those who are naturally just empathic, right? But I'm saying when you get into that next level stage of consciousness, and this is all temporary. When I say a state of consciousness, very much like water is liquid, but it's not always liquid. It could be gaseous or it could be solid, yet it is still water. Just like it is consciousness, consciousness is explored and experienced in different mediums for spans of time. Just like samadhi, a lot of times when they speak of samadhi, or what samadhi speaks of, is that really happy, abundant state of consciousness that's experienced with these states of detachment. And the state of a detachment that people say the space that's between number two and number three, or the space between breaths, or they call it no mind, or they call it non thought. I'm still looking for the Sanskrit word of what they called it. But the time when there's no thoughts going in the mind for extended period of times, there's this sense of liberation and ecstatic happiness that comes. Yet for this, it's experienced in little short periods of times. If you decide to focus on this, you elongate those periods, but yet they're daisy chained. This isn't like, oh, this person is enlightened or whatever, and then they're in this state 24/7. Although on social media, they might put out that image, in reality, they appear to be just a regular person, but they know how to go down that route, how to drive down the maps of the minds to achieve that state of consciousness. So when it comes into the roles that the personalities play, because we need to go back to the etymology of the word person to understand what it is we're speaking. So the word person, again, comes from Greek personas. A personas is a mask that is worn by the players on stage. So oftentimes when we're said, oh, this person, you're not even a real person. Why are you behaving this way? To become more conscious and reflect on how we are, say, when we're happy, when we're sleepy, when we're angry, when we're excited, all these different emotions are like different colored lenses that we put on, and we see and reinterpret the world differently. And within these different states of mind, again, it's a state of mind. Like if you're in Texas, if you're in Colorado, if you're in Maine, if you're in Australia, it's a different state, but yet in the same location, still on the planet. It's a different state of which we view and see things. It's almost like it's a different state, which there's a circle, and these different states are different points of view into the middle. And so for it, some things seem distorted, but rather it could be there's a tree in your way, but from a happy state of mind, you see the tree coming and casting the shade over the garden. So it always depends on what state of view, but also realize that these are mechanisms for consciousness to move through. If we were at a pure state of consciousness, or you're in the more sensitive spiritual states of consciousness, there is a time and a place for that. It's not always a place to be spiritual, really sensitive, feeling, seeing auras all the time, because you may find yourself getting very disturbed or very sensitive when you're around, I call it really draggy conversation. When you're trying to have a conversation about the universe, enlightenment, quantum physics, and someone just wants to talk about what football game came on or what so and so did, you will find this irritation in your consciousness, like in your heart and in your gut, because you want to function from this other state of mind. But sometimes to realize there's a time and a space for everything. When these other conversations are going on, this is when another persona, a different personality, a different character trait, or a different character, its role to come in to cope and manage in that state of consciousness. Because you could say we're becoming more aware now that there's higher and lower states of consciousness, or rather, I would say a spectrum of awareness. And on the spectrum of awareness that we experience, realize it's a spectrum, it's not a line. It's something that we go in and out of, it's something we surf. We surf the waves of reality. There are these highs, these lows, and these dips. If you've ever surfed or been to the ocean, you work with the ocean. You don't work against the ocean, because the ocean will knock you on your ass. Likewise, if you try to go against the flow, it will knock you down, and you can continue to get up and you get stronger, yet you will become the bull, when the entire goal is to not fight the bull. You achieve this, you win the bullfight by dancing around the bull and letting it get tired. So when you find yourself in these times when you want to elevate to conversation, go a little bit deeper, have that time in that space to listen intentionally, listen closely, listen wholeheartedly to the other person, because they care. However, they might not be even conscious. I've heard other people refer to those of this as bots. However, since there are no questions, there will be no answers to this. Again, there's some things I may speak upon, but only when the questions are asked. So when it comes to these times, if you want to elevate the conversation, listen closely, listen attentively, so that way when you're explaining something to them, that they can understand it. It's better for you to explain something into the lens and a viewpoint where someone is sitting at than to try to get them to change their viewpoint. It's just like if you were watching a movie with someone and you're like, hey, yo, come see it from here. And realizing when they get up from their seat and they walk over, they're probably not going to be looking at the screen. They're going to be trying to make sure they don't hit the knees of the people in front of them, apologizing for everyone they're walking in front of, and trying to go and find a sit in this new spot in the theater where the sound is just right, only to miss a crucial part in the movie and the experience that's going on. Rather, instead of trying to bring them to where you're at, go to where they're at, see it from their point, and see, the sound might not have been as good at here, but like I got a great viewpoint on the reflection of sound, or the way the light hit was just perfect from here. Likewise, when it comes into conversations, the person who sees from the bubble reality of football, or the bubble reality of politics, or the bubble reality of cultural identity, to be able to bring it to them, because along with the personas, along with these eyes, along with the samskaras come, you could say, truly like a bubble of consciousness as a limit to the perceptions. Or when I think about myself as a swimmer back in the day, you had to almost put it in those terms for me to get it, because it's like someone who's a fitness trainer or a personal trainer in a way sees the potential or fitness potential in every single person they talk to. Someone who is a live speaker or a politician looks for those who can get their ways through conversations like, man, this person's going to make a great businessman or politician in the future. And even something like a waiter coming over and dealing with an objection is like, man, that guy would make a really great salesman. So in that way, realize these different bubbles of experience that all humans go in. It's just like these different eyes, these different personalities, these various samskaras are just like the apps on your phone screen. You could say your consciousness is like the phone. These different personalities of anger, happiness, peacefulness, abundance, lack, anger, love, frustration, tranquility, trustworthiness are all different apps on your screen. And you decide when for it to come up. Rather, everything else is running in the background and learning from the one that's in the place of experience. So in that way, the data that is garnered by these other eyes are used for when it's your time to elevate conversation, or used when it's your time to communicate more clearly and efficiently. It's important for you to realize that there's a time and a place for everything. It's not always the place to force. It's not always the time to try to enlighten or tell everyone something. Because if anything, with you listening, this person who's just rambling off about something can give you a new perspective about life that you've been missing out of. Or if you're like me, another activity I like to do is when I'm really feeling in a spiritual mode, yet I'm in a place with beings that just are, you could say, still dwelling in the lower states of consciousness of food, gossip, sex, achievement, competition, and that's the entire realms of their experience. What I do is I watch them and I engage in the way of watching, while watching myself from third person, a conscious exercise to watch your character play and watch their characters play out. Watching people in the way to see how they're almost interacting, much like something in a Sims game, much acting like something in a Netflix movie, These roles these people's play and they fulfill, the person who steps up, the person who you say something about his team and you know that they're going to react. You know, someone mentions the T word, they say Trump, they're going to react. And you know where the conversation is going to go. And you're almost watching this truly unfold in front of you. You're watching a series of reactions that almost seem planned or rehearsed in a way, because especially when it comes to family and things, you can almost know and guarantee the direction a conversation or the direction of an experience is going to go based on habits. Because when it comes into simulations and holographic reality, next week I'll be speaking on this because the CIA has unreleased documents and it's becoming public knowledge to help bring more awareness and comfort into this fact that we are living in a simulation. So when it comes into how a simulated reality functions, it more so means that this is a species or a bubble of creation within another aspect of creation. Everything is of waveform, of particle form that is influenced by consciousness. Consciousness is experienced within the brain. Reality is relative to the experiencer. So thus, reality and manifestation is possible because with your thoughts and within, by changing your beliefs and subconscious thought patterns, you attract and meld reality like clay to meet and match those expectations. More reason to enhance your vibration and spirituality, because the more you do this, and I don't mean just reading random things or figuring out what type of star seed you are, I mean truly putting in that energy on the mat in your yoga, whatever type of practice, putting in that intention and that focus into your meditations, harnessing prana, as I spoke about 2 weeks ago. Putting that work in when you find yourself going in these patterns and reflecting on why these things are happening. When you hear me or other spiritual people you listen to say these profound things, actually taking the strength to take out a piece of pen and paper and write it down, reflect on it, because otherwise it will be deleted from your mind and your consciousness. For like everything in this reality, holding a state of pitch, a state of mind, any type of achievement takes work and persistence. Even the houses and the formations that we build would fall down by the forces of nature if it was not for maintenance. The trees always continue to grow and crack the concrete. That's why concrete needs to keep getting laid down. Just like the trees need to shed and release their leaves to release disease and to grow back right within, just like the hairs on our bodies. Likewise, when it comes to these seasonalities and these cycles of consciousness you experience, learn them, recognize them, and learn how to master them and accept them how they are, and not fighting against it, but going with the cycle. When you find yourself in these spiritual lulls, notice what it is you could do a little differently of accepting that you're in this state. To accept that, okay, I need to take care of some of these fundamental things in my everyday life. And when you're in these spiritual highs, appreciating these things, writing these things down, reflecting these. When you're in these cycles of happiness, when you're in these cycles of sadness, when you're in these cycles of enlightenment, or realizing the fact that you are indeed in a simulated reality, in that way that your consciousness is projecting into here from another place. Everything you experience is in your mind. It is not outside. Externally is legitimately inside of your body. This is all an agreed hallucination that humans experience. In a space of infinite realities, parallel dimensions that is confirmed and literally is confirmed and scientific evidence. You could go look it up. With this being a fact, I would even extend this fact to saying there's not just one parallel reality where time moves backwards. There are thousands of parallel realities. And with that, when we change our mind and we change our perspective and shift this in the different personas and eyes we use, that allows us to change the direction of which the ship flows down the stream. When we change these past, the environments and characters and these other things we perceive come to match this, because again, reality is perceived from the inside. External is all but of an illusion to the state of consciousness we are in. But when you really reflect, because when I say it's reflect, Because we say, oh, yeah, I know, reality is an illusion. Oh, yeah, I know this is simulation. Oh, I know that I'm energy. We need to truly reflect on things and realize and spend time, have a detachment session a month, or just really look and think about, wow, everything I'm seeing around me is coming into my mind. So everything that's coming into these two holes in the front of my space are being flipped upside down, and then my brain is telling me what's going on. And the more we realize this, you might find this weird feeling in your stomach, this weird queasy feeling, the back of your tongue starting to feel a certain type of way. This is a space of you say edit and changing your path along the way. But with this consistent path, can you then manifest what it is you want to go? You can manifest where you want to go down the river, but like with everything, it's consistency and persistency. Because some things it makes seem like, oh, we say it or we read something and it's amazing, but it comes from indeed reflecting means integrating the knowledge we attain. And upon integrating the knowledge that we have retained is again looking and seeing about, okay, how does this actually work? How does this function? When we read an Instagram post or we see something that really makes us think differently, to stop and think, why did it make me think differently? How did this just shift my perspective? Why am I feeling this way? And how come I feel like this, yet this person that's just walking around on the phone has no idea of this going on? What's the difference between me and that being? Or is this being simply a reflection of my consciousness? And a lot of these are questions for us to ask ourselves. Because again, when it comes to personas, personalities, these are different functions, different tools in a toolbox, different apps on our phone to achieve and garner information from different spaces. When we need to do the more like doughy, daily in the life types of things that you could say drag us down, when it's like, oh, got to go pay the bills. I got to go shop. I got to go do this. So, I need to talk with them because, oh, they're complaining. Oh, I need to deal with this. Realizing that, accepting that, not fighting with the bull, not trying to grab it by the horns, but rather letting it dance around the cape. All right, well, you know what? People are starting to argue this stuff's happened. I'm going to move into here, do this. Okay. Oh man, my uncle's just trying to talk to me about football, how I should have done this and this. Okay, yes, I'll listen. I'll gain information and be here because with that, I'm getting a better perspective on this other person's state of consciousness. Likewise, I was saying earlier, if you're watching a movie and it's surround sound and the sound's a little weird where you're at and you get someone else up and you're like, hey, come down here. Like, you got to watch it from here. This is the best spot in the house. You got to check it out. You get your friend up, and as they're walking down, they're trying not to hit the legs of the people around them and apologizing, not paying attention to what's going on the screen, only to get there to be frustrated, like, hey, why'd you take me from where I was at? The seat's cold, da 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 da. Likewise, when we try to get someone to see from our perspective instead of seeing how they're seeing it and then explaining that, is using a combination of these different personas, the combination of these different eyes in order to help us better communicate and connect points and connect consciousness with these beings as we spread the light around the world. Because sometimes when it comes to personalities, when it comes to samskaras, I see a lot of talk about removing these. And when I say removing, people are like, wait, how do I get rid of all this? This doesn't make sense. This seems impossible. Why is this person 70 years old telling me how to do this? Why is it someone who's like 45 telling me how to do this? Like, why did it take them 50 years to achieve this state? Well, you can walk somewhere, you can drive a car. You still get to the destination. One's not better than the other, but realize what it is that they learned along this route. When it comes for it, I really see when it comes to samskaras, eyes, personalities, characters, the ego, whatever word you want to use, more of the realization is the thing is, it's not just being able to recite it with our mouths or memorize the term, but rather embody it without a shade of a doubt. Know that, okay, when I'm angry or frustrated, this is an entire personality that is acting this way. I have to express this because this is adrenaline that's burning in my body that needs to be that has to burn off. Like, I have to let this burn off in order to experience this. If I fight this off, it's just going to create more toxicity within my being. Likewise, when it comes into all these other states, is realizing the role they play and seeing them as a card that we use, a card that we play in this game. Yet the consciousness, the pure consciousness, is what's holding the hands. So with that, we're about to begin the meditation section. For those listening to the replay, this is going to be right after this. We'll be streaming live on TikTok, probably about next week once I reach over 10,000 followers, where I will be talking about the holographic universe and simulated reality, answering questions. Again, you must ask the question in order to gain the answer. Have a nice day, and namaste.